So this is from Brussels back to Boris Johnson. The Brexit plans, no thank you, was the word from the European Union yesterday, and said, thank you, this is your package, go home, work on it, back to sender, if you want to use that phraseology from the Nigerian environment. So where is the way forward for Boris Johnson and his cabinet in this very unsettled Brexit crisis that we have on our hands in the UK? Of course, you've heard all the stories about what this would mean for businesses and markets and what have you. But first, it has to be resolved on the political front. Let's get some answers from my colleague from London studios, Juliana Olayinka is there. Do you have any idea? I'm sure Prime Minister Boris Johnson must have been a little bit unhappy that the Brussels says, no, thank you, take your documents, rework it, and send it back to us.
Good morning, Bosun. Nice to see that you managed to get into the studio. Well, look, I must say October the 31st is really not too far away. And yesterday, Boris Johnson unveiled his plans to try and find a solution to the Irish backstop, the contentious issue that's stopping a withdrawal agreement passing through the Commons. And as to be expected, the opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, as well as the Scottish National Party in the House of Commons, said that it's impossible for them to back a deal. Some would say that it's purely because of the toxicity amongst the Commons MPs at the moment. Of course, last week, many of them had to apologise because things were becoming out of control and becoming personable. But there are some analysts this morning that do believe the 320 majority that Boris Johnson needs to pass this deal through Commons is becoming more viable. That's something that Theresa May tried to do 3 times and she failed 3 times. There are some opposition Labour MPs that have hinted that they will back Boris Johnson's deal. Remember, a lot of the opposition Labour constituencies are the majority of people that voted for Brexit. So even though they don't want to support Boris Johnson, they have to support their voters. DUP, the Northern Irish party that are propping Boris Johnson into power, they said that they think the deal is viable and they would also back it. But, of course, as you said, there's a problem. The problem being the EU, many of them of whom yesterday said that the deal falls way too short, that the deal is something that's completely unworkable and he will have to go back to the drawing board. So there is a problem. This morning, Boris Johnson and those close to him are suggesting that perhaps he will try to pass the vote in the Commons, which will put more pressure on Brussels, because if Brussels can see that even with all the contention, even with all the toing and froing and the fighting in Britain, if MPs in Britain can vote up this deal, then of course, if there is no deal by the 31st of October, then that lies with the EU. So messy Brexit does continue, but we do seem to be closer to a deal.
Very interesting on the political front, but I'm sure you've got some time this week to take a look at the markets, the UK market street, as it were. Take us through the week, as it were. Do you think we've had some great news on the stock market side, or from the London Stock Exchange, or on the currency side? How has it really been? If you factor in those negative manufacturing jobs data from the US, from now this morning from India, and of course the outlook on the trade talks between China and the US, we're expecting that in the next couple of days.
It's been so sensitive this week, Bosun. You know, you talked about the poor data from the US. We've had incredibly poor data from the UK. Of course, those are composite factors from PMI. So we've got the construction, the manufacturing, the services being the biggest contributor to Britain's GDP. That's fallen under 50 for the first time since March. In about 10 years, it's only fallen under 50 about 4 or 5 times. So it just shows how serious the economy is struggling because of Brexit uncertainty. But not just because of Brexit uncertainty. It seems as if the world, the global recession anxiety at the moment is really causing markets to react at anything. Surprisingly, this morning, the FTSE 100 opened up 19 points. And some have said that that's purely because any hope of a deal, even if a deal seems far away, any hope of that at the moment is triggering some people to be a little bit excited. Sterling at the moment is just leveling above the dollar. It's high up on the dollar at the moment, trading at about $1.23. But as you said, we do have some data coming in later today from the US jobs markets. It's looking to show that the US jobs market did increase in September. But still, you know, there are a lot of worries, of course, as well. We had that World Trade Organization ruling yesterday saying that the US can impose $7.5 billion every year on EU exports, and that's going to be a huge issue for the EU. They're already struggling with this Brexit scenario, and Germany, their biggest factor of
Juliana,
the economy, are also struggling. So there's a lot going on.
Juliana,
too much to say
I know quite,
in this short period of
quite
time.
a lot. I wanted to wish you a very nice weekend, but I remember you've got 1:30 standby crossover to the London studios, so don't go anywhere yet. We'll see you in a couple of hours. Thank you so much, Juliana Olayinka.